Almost every people who ever lived remembers a flood. Not a storm, the flood. The one that drowned the whole world. And here's the strange part. Nearly all of them agree the water didn't just rise. It was sent. Which leaves one dark little question each of them had to answer. What did we do to deserve it? 4 civilizations, 4 floods, 4 different answers. Listen to the gaps between them, because that's where they tell you what they were really afraid of. We start in the oldest city country. There was Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, 1,000 years before the Bible. Here the gods did not make people out of love. They made us as labor to dig the canals and grow the grain so the gods could rest. And for a while it worked. But people, being people, multiplied, cities filled, and they were loud. That is not a metaphor. In the oldest flood story we have, the god Enlil cannot sleep. The world has grown so crowded, so noisy, that the din of humanity rises up and keeps a god awake at night. So he decides to have some quiet. First a plague, then a drought. Then, when we were still there, still noisy, the flood. Not for our wickedness, for our volume. To Mesopotamia, humanity's great crime was simply being too many and too loud in a world that was never really built for us. Sail west and forward a few centuries to Greece, and the water gets a colder logic. Zeus comes down to earth disguised as a beggar, the way gods in these stories always do, to see how men will treat a stranger. He is taken in by a king named Lycaon, and Lycaon, to test whether his guest is really a god, murders a hostage, cooks him, and serves the flesh at dinner. Zeus overturns the table, and he looks at the whole race of men and decides they are all Lycaon, savage, faithless, rotten to the root. So he drowns them. To Greece, the crime wasn't noise. It was impiety, the failure to honor the gods and each other. The flood is what happens when reverence dies. Now the version you already know, but look at it fresh next to the others. In Genesis, the earth is filled with violence, not noise, not one impious king. Violence, every thought of the human heart bent toward harm, and God does something the other gods never do. He grieves. The text says it broke his heart that he had made us. So the Hebrew flood is not annoyance, and it's not a tantrum. It is a verdict, a court. The water comes down as justice on a world that had earned it. And then, this is the part that's easy to miss. When it's over, God does something no other flood god does. He apologizes. He hangs his war bow in the sky, points it away from the earth, and promises, never again. To the Hebrews, the flood was justice, followed by a covenant that justice would never again go this far. 3 floods, 3 crimes, too loud, too faithless, too cruel. You start to think you see the pattern, that a flood is always a punishment, and the only question is what for. And then you get to India, and the pattern breaks. A king named Manu is washing his hands in a river when a tiny fish swims into his palms and begs him, "Protect me." So he does. He keeps it in a jar. It outgrows the jar. A pond. It outgrows the pond, until it is vast enough to fill an ocean, and it tells him the truth. It is the god Vishnu, and a flood is coming that will dissolve everything that exists. But notice why. Not because Manu sinned. Not because anyone did. In India, the flood is not a punishment at all. It's a season. The universe breathes in and out. Worlds are made and unmade, and this water is simply the tide going out on one age so another can begin. Manu isn't spared because he's innocent of some crime. He's spared because he was kind to a fish. The water isn't a verdict here. Nobody is on trial. It's just the wheel turning. But sail east once more, to China, and the pattern breaks a second time. Here too, the great rivers rise and drown the world. But listen to what the people do about it. They do not build an ark. They do not wait to be warned or chosen or spared. A man named Gun tries to stop the flood the obvious way. He builds walls and dams to hold the water back. And for 9 years he fails. The water always wins. So his son, Yu, tries the opposite. Instead of fighting the water, he digs channels and canals carved across the land to lead the flood back to the sea. He labors for 13 years. They say he passed the door of his own house 3 times and never once stopped to go in. And it works. The waters drain. To China, the flood was not a punishment to survive. It was a problem to solve, and the hero was a man with a spade who simply refused to stop. So sit with the gaps, because that's the episode. To Mesopotamia, the universe is a landlord, and we are noisy tenants he'd rather be rid of. To Greece, it's a court of honor we dishonored. To the Hebrews, it's a court of justice, presided over by a judge who weeps as he sentences us, and then vows mercy. To India, it isn't a court at all, it's a wheel, and it turns without blame, without apology, without any interest in whether we were good. And to China, the flood wasn't a courtroom or a wheel at all. It was a river out of place, and a job that needed doing. None of these stories is really about water. Each one is a mirror. Tell me what your people thought the flood was for, and I'll tell you what they believed the universe is, whether it's watching you, judging you, turning indifferent over your head, or simply waiting for you to pick up a spade. And yet, for all that disagreement, look what they could not stop sharing. In almost every one of these stories, someone is warned. A voice reaches one person before the water does. There is usually a boat. There is always a door that closes against the dark. And there is always, always, someone who walks back out of it into a clean, drowned, brand new world. Across every border, every god, every reason, humanity kept telling itself the same quiet hope. That when the water comes, and one day the water always comes, someone will know in time. And someone, warned by a god, or just unwilling to drown, will be there to open the door on the other side. We could never agree on what we did to deserve the flood. We only ever agreed that we'd want to survive it. Maybe that's the oldest thing we know about ourselves.